Testing the audio. Anybody is online, we're going to be getting going at about 11 o'clock, so feel free to sit tight and we'll be with you soon. Hey everybody, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the information session today about financing for Prime and kind of figuring out if you're interested in studying with us, some of the different options that might be available to you for being able to afford the cost of tuition. I'm Mark. I am the president and co-founder of Prime. It says right here on my hoodie. I began my career in software development about 15 years ago, and I had the good fortune to be able to be working for a software company on the executive team for about 10 years. And one of the things that I was most struck with and that I really fell in love with about that company was the kind of education agnostic approach they took to finding talent. And that really definitely directly led to the philosophy of Prime and kind of what we do here, which is trying to connect people from non-traditional backgrounds to careers in software development and design. Prime is an immersion program, so we have programs that are 18 and 20 weeks respectively for UX and full stack software engineering that aim to help somebody with little or no background in technology get ready for jobs in the field. And that has been what we've been doing for the last couple of years. We now have a little over 550 alumni in the field. We have graduates working at well over 275 companies, and have really been making a lot of strides with helping people start careers in both software engineering and in user experience design. Our upcoming groups that are happening soon, we have deadlines coming up here for our next full stack software engineering cohort and the next user experience cohort as well. The deadline for our full stack group, which is the development program, is coming up on May 11th, which is actually this week. And the deadline for our next user experience cohort is a little bit further away, and that's going to be happening on June 3rd. Really, the whole goal of this session today is to give people a chance to ask questions if they have them. So I want you to feel free to go ahead and chime in if you have any questions. You can go ahead and mention that in the chat box below, and I have some people that are helping me out with the webinar that will get them in front of me to make sure I can answer them as they're going on, although I can't see them directly. So if I don't respond immediately, it's not you, it's me. We're definitely excited to answer any questions that you have. Certainly, we're hoping to focus on financing and getting everybody's questions answered there. But if you have other questions, feel free to ask those as well. We're happy to hopefully cover everybody's questions and slay everybody's curiosity for the day. To get started, if you wouldn't mind, please go ahead and introduce yourself in the comments. Say what program you're interested in, what questions you might have, and we'll make sure and cover all that as we go along. Largely what we're going to be doing for the presentation portion of the session today is really just walking through the figure out your financing checklist that some of you might have gotten in email or linked off to, and covering that content in specific. So thanks for tuning in, Travis. We'll be going through and kind of covering each of those items in a little bit of detail, but feel free to chime in if you have specific questions and want to dive in a little bit more. So I know some of you are joining us on Facebook and stuff, so you can't introduce yourself there, but feel free to reach out in any ways that are available to you. If nothing else, feel free to go ahead and email hello@primeacademy.io, and I'll try and a couple times in here check my email there too, but the comment box is your best bet. So I'm going to switch over and share my screen here so I can show you guys a little presentation that we put together. I'll bounce back and forth some of the discussion and certainly for answering any questions that you have, but I'm going to go ahead and kick this off now. Okay, so the first step in really figuring out your finances for the program is determining how much you're going to need to borrow. And this is pretty straightforward, but it does depend a little bit on what your situation is. Tuition for the programs at Prime is $14,250. There is, however, a $500 discount, and that's a prepayment discount that will apply really in any circumstance other than if you're borrowing from either Climb or Skills funds, which are the kind of associated programs that we can connect students with. So if you are taking out a loan on your own, if you're getting a check from the bank of mom and dad, if you have some savings, you're going to be working your tuition or using your tuition, paying your tuition based on that. In any of those circumstances, the $500 discount would apply. So in that case, your total tuition is going to be $13,750. One thing that is important to think about is that tuition is not the only expense. Obviously, you have food, money, insurance, kind of keeping your roof over your head while you're in the program, and you're going to want to make sure that you have coverage and you've thought about how that's going to be paid for. You're also going to want to think about keeping that those funds going over the course of your job search. So some students have a job by graduation day at Prime, but I wouldn't say that that's the typical response. I would say that the majority of students have a job within the first 3 months, but some people take up to 6 months to look around for a job, and our 6-month placement rate of jobs in the field is about 86%. So if you have, you are really going to be well served by having 3 to 6 months at least of living expenses banked beyond the program, or be willing to be kind of doing something else if you're, while you're looking for your job. We have some students that, get other kind of part-time jobs or whatever that they do while on the job search. That really is going to be up to you and kind of what your approach is. So. The other thing to keep in mind is that you will need a computer. So we standardize on Mac laptops here, running the current version of OS 10. So if you have an Apple laptop that was made in, say, the last 5 or 6 years, you should be fine for that already. If you don't, then that's something that you're going to want to consider. So that might be going out and getting a new one if you have the funds for that. Or we also have connections with some local companies that do kind of tech recycling programs where you can pick up a used laptop, typically one that's about 3 years old, for about $450, I think. So that's an option. Some people who are not Mac people, not Apple people, will buy a laptop and sell it again at the end of the program. You just are going to need it for the in-classroom portion especially, and then it's really helpful if you have it basically from the beginning of pre-work. So those are the things that you kind of want to keep in mind as you're thinking about the amount of funds, what you're going to need for the program overall. The next thing you might want to check into is scholarship criteria. So first off, as you're filling out your application, we do ask you for some demographic information. Part of the reason why we do that is so that we can understand what scholarships you may apply for. So first of all, we do have an automatic $500 scholarship for people of color who are coming into the program to try and encourage more inclusivity and a variety of people coming into the tech space. So that will be automatically applied if you qualify for that. Beyond that, we're really proud to be working with Minneapolis and St. Paul through the MSP Tech Hire Fund. And Tech Hire is a program that's designed to try and help people from follow non-traditional paths into the industry. So right now, the criteria are a little bit different between the two cities, but I'll kind of give you a high-level overview and then we'll talk about the specifics. So right now, the commonality between both cities' eligibility in Minneapolis and St. Paul is that you must be a resident of one of those cities. So you have to live in the actual city proper. So like if you live in St. Louis Park or Roseville, unfortunately, those are not able to be supported because these funds are predominantly coming from the actual cities themselves. The second is your household income must be defined as very low. So this is based on the CDBG income table. There's a link to this on our website. You're welcome to go check that out. Right now, if you're a single person, no dependents, that looks like about $31,650. So if you made less than that last year, or if you had, a layoff event or something like that that is limiting your income and it's dramatically different from last year, then those would be the circumstances under which you would qualify there. Under normal circumstances, these funds are limited to women and students of color. That is true for St. Paul right now. However, in Minneapolis, they do have an additional grant that they're braiding funding with that has broadened that that availability. So the demographic limitations in Minneapolis currently don't apply in terms of the race or gender. So having said all of this, the way that these funds work is that they're funded at the beginning of the year, which and in this case is in January, and they are basically available until funds run out. So typically we see funds running out of these programs as early as the middle of the summer. So I would really encourage, if you're interested in the program and you think you would qualify for these scholarships, to apply as soon as possible, because that's definitely going to give you the best chance of having availability for the funds. Again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to chime stuff into the comments. We're happy to answer things as things go along. I'm going to kind of keep booking through the content here, so so hopefully we'll have plenty of time to answer questions in between when they come up. Actually, let me take this one question that just came up quickly right now. So just one second. Let me switch over to video here. Okay, so one of the questions we had from the audience is, can I apply for FAFSA or something like the William D. Ford Federal Direct Loan to attend Prime? Generally speaking, the answer is no. There are maybe some circumstances where you might be able to. Often private scholarships won't have the same restrictions that some federal student loans or scholarships might have. Prime is not a traditional kind of like accredited program in the same way that like a four-year university is. We're licensed by the state of Minnesota, and we're licensed as a private career school, but we're not, we haven't, because we want to keep our curriculum flexible and keep it evolving with the market, that kind of locks us out of traditional Title IV accreditation and certification, which is basically the criterion for more traditional FAFSA student aid type programs. We're going to talk through some of the ways that people can get around that. In addition to the funds from places like MSP Tech Hire, there are a variety of ways to be able to do borrowing, but we're not able to support a traditional FAFSA application. As I mentioned, we have seen some students come through with scholarships from private scholarship organizations like Dollars for Scholars or things like that. Those are things that might be available to you, and if so, I would definitely pursue those, but it's definitely like a case-by-case basis. If you have any questions about the program or you're looking for any qualifications or anything, feel free to reach out to our to us at hello@primeacademy.io, and we're happy to answer any questions that you might have about that and help you kind of figure out if Prime would be qualifying for whatever it is that you're interested in. So let me switch back over to our slide share here. Okay, so the typical way that people who are not paying out of pocket is financing Prime, other than the people who are going through scholarship support from MSP Tech Hire, is with loans. So that might not be the right answer for everybody. It might not be the right answer for you, but we just want to kind of talk to you a little bit about the options that are available to you and what that's going to look like if you choose to pursue it. Really the first thing, as with a lot of things, certainly in the field and development and design, the first thing is research and diving in and figuring out what's available to you and understanding what's going on. A big part of that is looking at your credit score. The most significant thing that's going to impact things here is going to be kind of your household income and your credit score. If you are are applying through Climb or Skills Fund, which we'll be talking about a little bit more later on, they tend to care really only about your credit score. They don't really care as much about your current income, but that will be something that you would be filling out as you go through the application process with them. One place that you can go to and check out as a way of diving into this stuff is a website called NerdWallet. NerdWallet has a great tool here. It's nerdwallet.com/personal-loans. We'll pull that up here to kind of talk through it. Actually, I have it up in another window. So if you guys can see my screen here, really what this is doing is just giving you kind of some understanding. So let's go through and fill this out based on what maybe somebody's situation for Prime might be like. Let's say that you are going through and you're interested in taking out a loan. We're going to say other here based on this situation. So your household income, maybe from your spouse, is $50,000. And let's say you live right down the street from us here at Prime. Thing you're going to be interested in then is it's going to want to know what your credit score is. So let's say, for the sake of argument, we have excellent credit. we're going to be able to see that we have a variety of different organizations that are willing to make this kind of loan. It looks like it could be as low as 5.5%, depending upon the situation. One of the things you're gonna want to be mindful of as you're going through loans is looking at origination fees, looking at the term of the loan. That's going to be important, and then you're going to be looking at what credit score kind of qualifications go into play. These sorts of sites can be a great resource for going through and figuring out what the universe of options that are available to you might be. And that can kind of help you kind of shape up and frame up what your options might be. So that NerdWallet site's a great way to kind of just get going and figure things out. As the slide says here, it's one of the things that's going to be important for you to keep track of is what the repayment schedule for that loan looks like. So some loans, including some of the ones that we were talking about from Climb and Skills Fund, will allow for a deferred repayment schedule or an interest-only repayment schedule, so that you're not having to make a lot of payments back in while you're going through the process of studying at Prime. Some of the third-party loans may offer similar programs, or they may be something where you'd need to be paying them off right away. So make sure that you're taking that into account as you're looking at the amount of money that you're pulling out. And keep in mind that we really recommend, while many people work during the first tier of the program, that first 6 weeks, we really recommend that you put as much as possible of your effort directed towards the program during the remaining portions of your study at Prime. So we really recommend people are not working during that time if they can avoid it. So that's something to keep in mind as you're figuring out how much money you would want to have for borrowing. I had another question from the audience that was looking for some clarity on the scholarships. Specifically, the person was asking, as a white male living in Minneapolis, am I able to apply for the tech hire loan? The answer is, right now with the funding that they have available, yes, you could apply for the tech hire loan currently. The main thing that you're going to be looking at then is the income guidelines. So assuming that your income was under that 31,000 and some change guidelines, then you should be eligible for the program this year based on the funds that they have coming in. Okay. So another place that you can go in and start to look at specifically with your information is, the nice thing about that NerdWallet site was that it doesn't require you to submit any of your own information. You're really able to kind of generalize some stuff. You don't have to give them any contact info or whatever to be able to move things along. The one thing you might want to, if you're kind of ready to take the next step, would be a site like LendingTree. So LendingTree is going to allow you to actually enter in your personal information, your name, your address, things like that. And they're basically going to shop that around to a variety of different companies and get you back specific quotes around what your rates might look like. You don't need to take this step right away. You can definitely wait to take this step until after you've applied and been accepted to Prime. Prime does have, as I've mentioned a couple times, those Climb and Skills Fund relationships, which are essentially kind of like a safety net, if nothing else. Those are loans that you likely will be able to qualify for. Often you're looking at something like a LendingTree or a NerdWallet as a way of figuring out if you have a better option out there. Because that $500 prepayment discount doesn't apply with a Climb or a Skills Fund loan. In many cases, if you can apply for and qualify for a loan on your own through a LendingTree or through one of the vendors we looked at on NerdWallet, that's going to be a better deal for you. You're going to end up getting through your Prime experience with less money to pay back overall. So, but the Climb and Skills Funds are there really to be able to make sure that you have an option and that you are able to be able to that financing won't stand in the way of your education. That's kind of why we have those relationships in place. So given that, we have this kind of special relationship with Skills Fund and Climb, and both those programs allow you to finance up to 100% of your tuition, and that can include the down payment. So there's a $1,500 down payment that's due at the time of kind of securing your seat once admissions has been offered to you, and that can be included in the financing. And in those programs, under certain circumstances, you can also borrow up to $5,000 of living expenses within the program as well. So the way that those work, and it's important to understand this, if you're borrowing for living expenses from Climber Skills Fund, those living expenses do not come available until what is week 7 in the program. So it's basically when you enter the physical classroom. So after that 6 weeks of upfront study and classes virtually, then you're gonna have access to those living expenses funds. They don't come in before that. So that's something that's important to know. About 25% of students are using loans from these lenders, from Skills Fund and Climb. So it's a popular option. It as you saw from kind of the example we were going through in NerdWallet, the interest rates are in that ballpark. If you have great credit, you can definitely get a better loan on your own potentially, but interest rates generally are around 11 to 13%. And those are going to depend a little bit on the term of the loan. So Climb offers 3-year loans. I believe Skills Fund offers 5-year loans as well. You can choose an interest-only loan. That's going to allow you to make monthly payments that are just interest while you're in the program at Prime. And there also are some programs where you can do a deferred loan, which means you don't make any payments at all until a couple months after graduation. The deferred loan, you're going to pay a greater interest fee on. The interest-only loan is going to help you buy down the interest rate a little bit. So that's going to depend, kind of what's right for your situation. Similarly, as I mentioned before, these programs don't qualify for the $500 prepayment discount because ultimately Prime is effectively getting paid back over time as well. If you were to borrow from somebody on your own, the Lending Tree or a NerdWallet type person, they're going to give you the cash up front, so you can pay Prime in total at the time that you need to, which allows you to qualify for that $500 discount. So another question about the Tech Hire Scholarship that is coming in from the audience. Let me switch over to the camera again here. Sorry. Okay, another question that is coming in about the Tech Hire Scholarships is, is applying for the Tech Hire Scholarship something that I should do after I found out if I have admissions, or should I be doing that now? And it's a great question. The way that things work, so the Tech Hire Scholarship is administered by an organization called JFCS, which stands for Jewish Family and Children's Services of Minnesota. They're, in this case, contracted by the local government to do eligibility checks. They're looking at income. They're looking at your background and making sure that you qualify for the demographic and the financial components of the program. Through the application process, as you're sharing data with us on your demographics and your income and things like that, we'll be identifying people who meet the criteria that the scholarship program is set up to support, and we would be directing those individuals towards JFCS to apply. You don't have to apply, and actually you kind of can't apply until after admissions is offered. You can look at the MSP Tech Hire website and do some research and stuff if you wanted to, but really you can't actually get approved for the scholarship until you've been approved for the program. So that's the first step, is going through first going through the application process, coming in for an interview, making sure everything is good to go, and then at that point you would be invited to have conversations with JFCS and move forward from there. It's not a sometimes people talk about scholarships, they think of filling out an essay or an application. Really the things that JFCS is doing is the demographic information and checking in on making sure that you qualify for what the program that the government has set up locally. But there's not like a component of it where you're trying to figure out whether or not you are whether or not you qualify from a subjective level. They're just kind of checking the boxes, making sure that you have the criteria are met in terms of qualifying for the program. So let me come back. We have a couple more slides that we're going to drop in, but feel free to ask any questions that you have, and we will keep things going from there. So that kind of covers Climb and Skills Fund. If you have any questions there, feel free to ask in the comments. So we talked a little bit about this, but it is important to keep in mind when things are due, the timing, and kind of what things happen in terms of the timeline for payments. The first thing that's important to understand is that the $1,500 deposit is due when you're accepted into the program in order to hold your seat. And usually you have a week or two of kind of deadline that's presented for that when you're accepted. But we'd be looking for that payment up front. You can at that point apply for a scholarship, or excuse me, apply for a loan through like a Skills Fund or a Climb or your independent party, and then be able to pay it off from that. As long as you've been accepted by a Skills Fund or Climb, then the $1,500 deposit can be rolled into that. If you're waiting to figure it out, then you just need to write the check out along with your contract, your student contract, to be able to hold your place. In terms of the balance of the tuition, so other than that $1,500 deposit, if you're paying for the program with a personal loan or out of pocket or out of savings, the balance for that tuition is going to be due on the first day of full-time study at Prime. So that's week 7 in the program. So basically the first day you come into the classroom, you bring a check with you and you pay that off. You can pay it off earlier if you want to. We send out online invoices so you can pay with an electronic check if you want to, but that's the point at which in the program that the balance of your tuition is due. So really the goal of Prime is more than anything to try and help people get into the industry, be really earning themselves a position in a job that's important to them and that they feel is fulfilling and exciting and that they are happy to go to work in the morning. As it happens, being a software developer or designer actually pays pretty well too. So it kind of works out for people across the board. Right now, the average salary of a Prime graduate is over $55,000 a year in their first gig after the program. The average salary for a web developer in Minneapolis and a designer are both around $75,000. And I would say we've seen people hitting that mark pretty regularly within their first year or two of employment. We've seen some people that start at close to that or above it. It really depends on your background and your aptitude and kind of how you interview to some extent. Overall, students are experiencing more than a 60% raise from their pre-prime average salaries to their post-prime average salaries. And that's, I think really part of what makes that transition so fulfilling and why we're so excited to see people joining the industry at such a cool rate. Another thing that I can share with you, and this is something you can check out if you're interested in, go onto LinkedIn, go to linkedin.com/school/Prime Digital Academy/alumni. And what you'll get a chance to see is some of the people whose lives have been changed by Prime and who have, my screen will refresh here, who have kind of taken the plunge and gone through and started jobs at a huge variety of different organizations. We have, as I mentioned, graduates who have gone on to work at more than 270 different companies, mostly here in Minneapolis and the Twin Cities, but also internationally and nationally. So those are all things that you can check out and places that you can kind of look into and just see where other people have gone with it. Maybe find some people who you have a first level connection to and ask them about their experience at Prime, or somebody that a friend or a family member could connect you to through a link. So really now the goal is to focus on some questions if you have any. Let me switch over to my video here, see if we have any other some other questions coming in. One moment. All right, so one of the questions we have in the audience here is, what is the difference between Skills Fund and Climb? So Skills Fund and Climb are both really similar organizations. We offer partnerships with both of them just to give people some choice and some options to look into things. While they fulfill essentially the same role, the same niche, they're all of the details are going to be slightly different one way or another. So you will find that the interest rates are going to be a little different between the two of them. You're going to find that the plans that are available, as I had mentioned before, Climb, I believe, offers 3-year loans, and Skills Fund offers 3- and 5-year loans. I believe they both offer deferred options for the program for deferred payment. I'm not certain if they both offer interest-only loans to buy down the rate. That would be something that you could look into if you were interested. Ultimately, we recommend if you're considering going for a loan and you've kind of gone down the NerdWallet and the lending tree options and are not finding things that fit for you, we really recommend that you apply to both Skills Fund and Climb and just see which one is a better deal for you. You're going to qualify a little differently for each of them by going through that step. It takes a little bit longer than applying for each one of them, but you're gonna be headed towards the best kind of possible outcome that you can get, knowing that that you're aimed at where you're going to get the best return on your money, where you're going to be able to kind of avoid starting repayments for as long as possible, and all of that. Okay, couple questions from the audience then. One is the tuition for Prime tax deductible? I will give you an answer on that. I am not a tax professional, and you should definitely talk to an accountant or a CPA or a financial planner or something to be able to determine whether or not it's right for you. Our understanding from my perspective and what I've understood from the students who have come through the program in the past is that prime tuition is not always deductible in the way that like a traditional kind of accredited degree can be. There are some circumstances where you can use the lifelong learning credit to be able to deduct your tuition at Prime. For the most part, that is, in our understanding, based on an ability to say that it's training within your industry. So where we've seen it be successful in the past, somebody who is maybe like a project manager or a graphic designer or a quality assurance person that was doing the training in order to advance their career and become a developer, those tend to be tax deductible then. If you were a truck driver or a lawyer or a pharmacist or an opera singer, we've had 4 opera singers come through the program, then that probably wouldn't apply in the same way. Again, your mileage may vary. You should definitely talk to a tax professional about it to get the straight answer for your specific circumstance. But our understanding from what we've seen with students in the past is that sometimes it can be, but it's not always. Another person is saying that they're surprised to see the average income for a UX designer is higher than the programmer income. Are designers more in demand than coders? I would say no. In terms of overall quantity, there are more jobs out there in dev than there are in UX, which is why we have more frequent UX or more frequent dev cohorts than we have UX cohorts. We're trying to balance ourselves towards the demand in the market. The reality is that UX is not as entry-level focused of a field. A lot of UX jobs are starting more in more mid-level things, which tends to bump the salary up a little bit. There's also very, very little inconsistency in titles in either UX or development. So all of those average statistics really kind of need to be taken with a grain of salt. I would say for Prime graduates coming out of the program, we've seen that the average for the 2 programs is pretty close. I would say maybe statistically right now, UXers are a little bit higher in starting salary. But having said that, the distribution is tighter in development. So there's a more kind of more people in development are kind of clustered around the center, whereas UX has some people that are really at the high end and some people that are further at the lower end, and it's a little bit flatter of a bell curve. So it kind of comes out in the wash for the most part. We've seen on average salaries from students of both programs being pretty comparable. Okay, Laura has a question. She's saying, wondering about the income qualification for the Tech Art Scholarship. She's working Monday to Friday job right now and a part-time job on weekends. She's doing to save up, so her income right now is above $31,650. However, upon acceptance Prime, I would quit both jobs. Which she wants to know which income the Tech Hire Scholarship is based on, if it's before Prime or during Prime. It's definitely before Prime because pretty much everybody's not working during Prime, so otherwise everyone will qualify. Having said that, what they'll generally do is they'll look at your previous year W-2. So in your case, if your previous year W-2 would show that you were beneath the $31,650 limit, then you would likely qualify. So they may ask you for current pay stubs and stuff as well, in which case you could explain, maybe I've been taking on the second job in order to do this, in order to save up so I have living expenses, and be able to explore that. I would definitely say there would be no reason to not apply early, go through the hoops with admission, get hooked up with JSCS. Worst case scenario, if they say, yeah, we can't help you, then you just know that you've already been accepted to Prime, and you're kind of able to plan a little more directly towards whatever the cohort is that you want to get into to determine your start date and your kind of completion date of the program. So, but the short answer to the question is Tech Hire looks at your income before the program, but they're usually doing that based on your tax returns. So if you have your W-2s and your taxes from this year, they're going to be looking at the stuff from 2017. One of the questions that we sometimes hear from folks is, can I still get a loan for living expenses if I qualify for the Tech Hire scholarship? And the answer to that is a little bit dependent upon your individual situation. The great thing about the MSV Tech Hire sponsorship this year is that it's covering 100% of tuition. The kind of double-edged sword of that is that the living expenses, specifically from programs like Climb and Skills Fund, require you to have a certain amount of tuition that you're borrowing for in addition to the living expenses. We've worked with the city in the past on looking at people's situations, and sometimes we're able to provide some flexibility that allows people to be able to do both if they're getting support, but that would be kind of on a one-off basis. We'd need to talk to you about that. So if you are looking at a Tech Hire scholarship and you thought that you would need living expenses, let us know about that. There are also some other programs that JFCS coordinates that have been able to support people in the past with kind of they call it surrounding services, so helping with things for transportation, for food, for shelter and things like that. There are sometimes programs that are available to help out with some of those other kind of predictable expenses. What other I'm happy to answer any other questions you guys have. Feel free to drop something into the comments below. I'm gonna try and drop out of my my chat window here real quick to just make sure I don't have any emails in. Doesn't look like I do. The finances of a program like this can be a little daunting. Like the program is not inexpensive. We understand that. What we found though is that the ROI really does seem to be there for the vast majority of students. As we mentioned, that 60 to 70% raise that most students are enjoying from their pre-prime salary to their post-prime salary really means that they're generally paying off their tuition. If that was their case, they were taking 100% of those funds and paying off their tuition, the ROI is there almost always within a year, and sometimes within as little as 6 months. So it really depends on your situation and what your finances look like, but we've definitely seen it pay off for people in the past, and we understand that everybody's situation is a little different. Money and financial situations and all that stuff is really specific and really case off on an individual basis. So if you have questions, we're more than happy to help out. You can email us at hello@primeacademy.io. You can send us there's a chat window on the website that you can chat with us on, or you can just give us a call. Our phone number is 952-222-8108, which is also on the website. And we're happy to kind of talk through individual situations and help you kind of understand what your options might be. And then the one kind of final question, unless if somebody else chimes in at the end here, looks like we have 2 more final questions. Someone asks, is it absolutely necessary to quit your job for Prime? Ultimately, the answer is yes, although the timeline can vary. So if you have a full-time job, you can maintain that full-time job through that first tier of the program. So the first 6 weeks of the program, as long as you're willing to do your work in the evenings and make yourself available and kind of put in the effort, you can absolutely hold down a job during that period. I would say the majority of students do that. About 80% of students have a job coming into Prime, and most of them are working through that 6-week period. After that, so when you're in the classroom, generally you're going to be spending usually a basement of 60 hours a week on your study, and many students spend up to 80 or more hours a week on your studies. Generally, that's pretty incompatible with having a job. We certainly have had some students that have maybe had a server job or something that was a kind of part-time deal where they kept like a shift over the weekends, or they had a little bit of freelance stuff or something they were doing on the sides. Those students have made it through, but they've also really put themselves through a lot. So I would say if you can avoid doing that, I think you will thank yourself for it. I would absolutely say that you cannot have a full-time job as you're going through Prime. A part-time job, that's going to be a little bit up to you. Our recommendation is that you have a support system, you have the loans or whatever in place in order to not need to work, so that if you get into the situation and it is too much, that you can decide to do what's best. I mean, ultimately, Prime, as we discussed, is not cheap, and you're making this big investment in your future. It's really hard to not maximize the return on that $14,000 investment in order to be making, however many bucks an hour for 8 hours a week or 10 hours a week doing part-time work. So that's kind of the criteria we would use to help you out. One student's asking, basically saying that their income is over the threshold for their scholarship. Should they bother applying? Unfortunately, yeah. Like for MSP Tech Hire scholarship stuff, if your salary is over it, and keep in mind that the salary, it's not just you though. If you have dependents, if you live in a household, then that can adjust that number and it goes up from 31,000. That's all in the table that we link to on the website for the CDBG table. So you can take a look at that if you want to. But ultimately, it is pretty cut and dry. It's kind of a formula thing. So if you are over that level of income, JFCS will not be able to offer support. So it kind of comes to you. Unfortunately, they don't take your current level of indebtedness, whether it's student loans or something else, into consideration. It's unfortunate. There are a lot of people with tons of student loans out there that taking on even more student loans is a really hard thing to do. I guess the best I can tell you is encourage you to look around, look in LinkedIn, network with some people, find some people who have taken a chance on Prime and come in and see how they feel about the ROI on it. I think you'll find that people are really believe in the program and believe that it helped them get to a better place. That doesn't necessarily help make it any easier, make it feel any better to take on more debt in a situation where you already have a lot of debt. But that unfortunately is probably the situation you're looking for if you're over the threshold for scholarship support through MSP Tech Hire. All right. Is there any other questions out there? We'll give them kind of a 10-second warning here for people to have any final requests or final things that they're curious about. I'm happy to answer questions on anything. It doesn't have to be about finance. If you have other questions about the program, you're welcome to share those as well. I had mentioned before there is a deadline coming up, so the next full stack deadline is the end of this week. It's May 11th. For those of you that stuck around until the end, I'll let you in on a secret and let you know that we will likely extend that deadline through the weekend. We generally do that, so you'll have this weekend to be able to complete your application as well. If you were teetering on whether or not to apply this time or for the next cohort based on the timeline, then you have that information. The next UX cohort will be the deadline is coming up in June, at the beginning of June. So we hope to see applications from some of you during that time. As I said, I really appreciate your time hanging out with us here this morning and getting your questions answered, hopefully, about financing and what Prime looks like for you, hopefully. If you have any additional questions, feel free, again, email us at hello@primeacademy.io or check out the website and give us a call or chat with us on there. I hope you all have a great rest of your day and look forward to seeing applications from you. Have a great day.